Hello and welcome back to my channel. After I dropped my previous video on my best study tips for taking the level 1 and level 2, I got a lot more concentrated comments, and I want to take this time to address as many as I can and talk more about my experiences. As you have heard from all of my licenses, I've been studying for a long time, so I have a pretty good rhythm, and I want to share that with you so that hopefully some of these things will help you internalize the material faster. The first question that I have is from Muhammad. Muhammad says, thanks for the video. Taking the level 1 in November, stuck with hypothesis testing, repeated it 3 times, but couldn't help myself remembering it. Any tips? I absolutely feel you. For me, this was financial reporting in level 1. For level 2, it was derivatives. And actually in level 2, I ended up studying to the degree that derivatives ended up being my best subject from the CFA exam. But first, I would say start drilling. That means doing 20 to 30 questions, whether that is from the CFA question bank or the Kaplan bank or whatever you have. Do drills where you focus specifically on that topic, and in a separate spreadsheet or Word document, write down all of the answers as to what you got wrong. At the end of each drill session, review the answers, and then before you start another drill session, review the answers again. If you're not understanding a calculation or you're not understanding the subject matter, find a different source that's teaching it to you. So for example, if you read it from the CFA Institute books and it just didn't sink in, find a YouTube video on it. If the YouTube video sucks, try a different one. Something that is actually underappreciated here, I believe, is the CFA Institute books online. At the end of every reading, they actually have a discussion section where people post questions, and it might make you feel better because people ask a lot of questions, both about things that you thought were easy and things that you didn't really understand. And other students respond to those questions as well as administrators. So this was something that I used for level 1. Especially for the mathematical sections where I didn't understand why a certain calculation was a certain way. Check out those discussion forums and you'll see people who might be a little bit more lost than you, and it will just give you a bit more confidence as well as you're doing it. Something that I recommended in my previous video was keeping a notepad running of all of these concepts, including formulas and definitions. You just put the word and you challenge yourself to be able to speak to that word and say the definition without any help or any prompting or any hints. Once you do all that, in addition to drilling 20 to 30 questions in one study session, I really think that you'll get much better results. All right, the next one is from Harshit. Harshit says, please tell me, is Institute end of chapter questions and mock tests of Institute enough for passing, or do I have to do the Institute online questions too for practice? I have found that if you read the chapter and do the end of chapter questions, if you come back to those same questions a couple of weeks after you did it, you will get much lower scores because you just didn't retain the information. I think the end of chapter questions I tended to score really high on because I had just reviewed the material. I remembered all the formulas and all the concepts. So with regards to this, I would say you will probably have to do more review questions because it just won't be enough practice. However, it depends on how many mock tests that you do. Something that I did when I was studying was, for level 1, I actually didn't do a lot of full mock tests. I would drill into the section. So I would just spend one day focused on financial reporting, one day on economics, and I would just do 20 to 30 questions per set until my score went up in each section. Personally, the way I study for exams is I feel that when you actually go to the test, that is just a marathon, and I don't have to do the practice exams to simulate what it's like to sit in a 3-hour setting. Once I have to be there, I will go and I'll do it and I'll make it happen. But I don't have to practice that stamina. The last thing I'd say here is that I think the CFA Institute questions are actually a lot harder than the Kaplan questions, at least from my experience with level 2, trying to go back and do some of the financial reporting questions for level 2 from the CFA Institute. So if you're able to get great scores using the CFA Institute questions, you are probably more prepared than someone scoring the same amount but on the Schweser materials, just because the Schweser materials are just an outline after all. But overall, you can judge by the percentage that you're getting right at the end of the day. That's the truest test. And when you are testing, don't use the formula sheets and don't use any help. grade yourself fairly, and that means grade yourself harshly so you know exactly where you are at for each topic of the CFA. All right, next I have a question from Gamgyul. Gamgyul says, congratulations, how did you deal with quant? I'm studying quant right now. Actually, I think that was the first one as well, hypothesis testing, right? I'm studying quant right now, and there's so many formulas. Did you focus on memorizing all of the formulas or focus on understanding and interpreting the given data? So my strategy for memorizing formulas was the month of the exam, I took the formula sheets with me on a walk, and I would walk around and say the formulas out loud from memory, and if I needed help, I would refer back to the answer sheet. So I ended up studying formulas a lot, and there are a ton of formulas. Not all of them you're going to use in the exam because there's just not enough questions to even ask you all the formulas, but you definitely have to memorize them. So if you get a question on accuracy versus precision and you don't know how to calculate that, that is an automatic, 0 for the question. So formulas are very critical, and something that I think is actually very tricky about the quantitative reasoning section is that it has a ton of definitions buried inside, including ones about machine learning algorithms and also how to validate a model, including, white standard errors or testing for multicollinearity. There's actually a lot of content to memorize in addition to the formulas. You definitely can't rely on interpreting the data because the chapter is so broad. The next one is from Gaurav. Congratulations on passing L2. I'm giving mine in November. How many days before the exam did you start giving mocks? So, if you've seen from my videos, I definitely have been trying to save money with regards to buying all the CFA materials. I've been getting them all secondhand. So, when I got my secondhand materials finally, I only had 4 mocks. So, my plan was on the last month of the exam to do 1 per week. Ultimately, I ended up doing something like 3.5. There were a couple of mocks that I didn't finish or that I just ended up skimming at the end. But I also showed in my video that I had access to the Kaplan question bank, and I ended up completing something like 80 or 90% of the whole question bank. So I was getting a lot of practice elsewhere. And something that I liked about that, which I've talked about earlier in this video as well, is just the drilling aspect of it and continuing to do practice questions on one topic until you've mastered the material. So 25 days before the exam, I started giving mocks, but 90 days before the exam, I was doing questions. I'll end this video on a funny one, which is a question from Priyanshu who says, is Schweser Notes sufficient for passing level 1, or do we need CFA 1 curriculum? What are your views on a combination of Schweser Notes and IFT free videos, because I am going on with this? I'd like to give you a roundabout answer via metaphor, and that is that my husband is actually from India. And where he is from, astrology is very important. So when we got married, we didn't go to an astrologer. And I asked him, well, why not? To check compatibility and all of that. And he said, well, because the decision is already made, there is no need to introduce doubt. So, Priyanshu, my friend, what I'm trying to tell you is there is no need to introduce doubt. You can absolutely crush it using the Schweser Notes and the IFT videos. If there's anything you don't understand, you can definitely look at other free resources on YouTube and forums and people asking questions and getting them answered. Be confident and be true to yourself, and that is what's going to pull you through the exam. Subscribe for part 2. Leave a like, leave a comment. I can continue doing these because why not? So let me know if you have any other questions, and stay tuned, and thank you for all of your comments and all of your support. It means a lot. Thanks.